Iran sits on the fourth largest proven oil reserves on Earth and the second largest natural gas reserves. It controls the northern shore of the most important energy choke point in the world. It has 88 million people, a civilization stretching back thousands of years, and a military that has kept the most powerful countries on the planet guessing for decades. And yet, average Iranians have watched their currency collapse. Inflation has been running near 50 to 60%. The economy was projected to shrink in both 2025 and 2026. Protests erupted across all 31 provinces, and in February 2026, the country was bombed by two of the world's most advanced militaries, and is still standing, still firing, still refusing to collapse. How does a country with this much natural wealth end up in this much trouble? And how does a country this battered keep surviving? The answer to both questions is the same. It is the land itself. If you look at Iran from above, the first thing you notice is that it is enormous. 1.65 million square kilometers, roughly 3 times the size of France, bigger than every country in Western Europe. But the second thing you notice is more important. Almost all of it is brutal terrain. Start in the west. The Zagros Mountains run for 1,600 kilometers along Iran's border with Iraq and Turkey, from the northwest all the way down to the Strait of Hormuz in the southeast. Peaks exceed 4,000 meters. The range is not one wall, it is a series of parallel ridges, sometimes 10 ridges wide, separated by deep valleys. Any army trying to push through the Zagros does not cross one mountain. It crosses a mountain system the size of the Alps, with every valley a potential ambush point, and every ridge a natural defensive line. Now go north. The Alborz Mountains run along the Caspian coast, and they are even more dramatic. Mount Damavand, Iran's highest point, rises to 5,610 meters, the tallest volcano in all of Asia. The Alborz separates the lush Caspian lowlands from the dry Iranian interior so sharply that the climate changes within a few kilometers. An army approaching from the north hits a vertical wall. And then there is what sits in the middle. The Dasht-e-Kavir, the Great Salt Desert, covers much of north-central Iran. It is one of the most inhospitable landscapes on Earth. Salt crusts, treacherous marshes, and almost no human settlement in its interior. To the east, the Dasht-e-Lut holds the record for the hottest surface temperature ever measured on the planet, 70.7 degrees Celsius, recorded by satellite. Put it all together, and you get a country that is essentially a high-altitude plateau, averaging around 900 meters in elevation, surrounded on nearly every side by mountains, and divided internally by deserts so hostile that they function as barriers between Iran's own regions. For 2,500 years, this has made Iran extraordinarily difficult to conquer. The Mongols did it, barely. The Arabs did it, slowly. Almost nobody else succeeded. The terrain punishes invaders, breaks supply lines, and gives defenders endless places to hide, regroup, and fight back. But here's the part that almost nobody talks about. This same geography does not just keep enemies out, it keeps Iran locked in. Geography does not just shape borders, it shapes people. And Iran's terrain has produced something that is both a source of cultural richness and a constant source of political tension. One of the most ethnically fragmented countries in the Middle East. Iran is not a monolithic Persian state. Persians make up roughly half to 60% of the population, depending on how you count. The rest includes Azerbaijani Turks, who may constitute as much as a quarter of the population, along with Kurds, Arabs, Baluch, Turkmen, and Lurs. These groups are not scattered randomly. They are concentrated in specific geographic zones, and those zones are separated from each other by the same mountains and deserts that protect the country from the outside. The Kurds live in the Zagros Mountains of the west and northwest. The Azerbaijani Turks dominate the northwest, stretching toward the border with Azerbaijan and Turkey. The Arabs live in Khuzestan in the southwest, near the oil fields and the Iraqi border. The Baluch live in the far southeast, along the border with Pakistan and Afghanistan. Each group occupies terrain that is naturally separated from the Persian-dominated center. This matters because it creates a structural political problem. The central government in Tehran has to hold together a country where geography itself encourages regional separation. The mountains that protect Iran from invasion also make it harder to build roads, lay pipelines, run communication networks, and integrate the economy. A general who published analysis on this noted that Iran's deserts form an internal barrier that divides the country into different territorial compartments, producing significant logistical inertia. In practical terms, moving goods from one side of Iran to the other is expensive and slow. Building infrastructure across the Zagros or the Kavir Desert is enormously costly. The economic development that oil wealth should have funded has been uneven, with peripheral regions, often where ethnic minorities live, consistently poorer than the center. And that is not just an economic problem, it is a security problem. Every time Iran faces external pressure, sanctions, military strikes, economic crisis, the risk of internal fragmentation increases. Kurdish groups in the West have a long history of armed resistance. Arab populations in Khuzestan have grievances tied to economic neglect, despite sitting on top of some of Iran's richest oil fields. Baluch separatists in the southeast have carried out attacks against government forces for years. The Iranian state's response has been consistent for over a century: centralize power, build a strong security apparatus, and maintain control of the territory at all costs. The Revolutionary Guard does not just defend borders, it manages internal cohesion. And when that cohesion comes under threat, as it did in the massive protests of late 2025, the crackdown is total. Because from Tehran's perspective, losing control of one region risks losing the whole. Geography made Iran hard to conquer from the outside, but it also made Iran hard to govern from the inside. And that tension, between fortress and fragmentation, is the defining paradox of the country. Now here is where the paradox gets sharper. Iran is one of the most resource-rich countries on Earth. It holds roughly 209 billion barrels of proven oil reserves, fourth in the world. Its natural gas reserves are second only to Russia. It sits on significant mineral deposits, and the Persian Gulf countries that depend on the Strait of Hormuz, the strait Iran overlooks, generate trillions of dollars in energy exports every year. So why is the Iranian economy in crisis? Part of the answer is sanctions. Western sanctions, particularly after the US withdrawal from the nuclear deal in 2018, have strangled Iran's ability to sell oil on the open market, access the international banking system, and import critical technology. By late 2025, the World Bank projected that Iran's economy would shrink in both 2025 and 2026, with inflation approaching 60%. But sanctions are not the whole story. Geography plays a deeper role. Iran's energy resources are concentrated in specific zones: the oil fields of Khuzestan in the southwest, the massive South Pars gas field in the Persian Gulf. But the population centers, the industrial base, and the political capital are elsewhere: Tehran, Isfahan, Shiraz, Tabriz, spread across the interior plateau and the mountain foothills. Connecting those resources to those cities, and then getting exports to market, requires infrastructure that has to cross some of the most difficult terrain on the continent. Pipelines have to cross mountain ranges. Roads have to navigate desert and high passes. Rail networks are limited. The result is that Iran's infrastructure costs are structurally higher than its Gulf neighbors, who sit on flat desert with direct port access. Saudi Arabia can pump oil and load it onto tankers within kilometers. Iran's logistics chain is longer, harder, and more expensive at every step. This geographic friction helps explain a structural paradox that analysts have noted for years. Iran has immense energy resources, but the transformation of those resources into widespread economic power has been historically limited. Oil revenues support the state, but they do not eliminate the structural problems of a complex territory. And here is the strategic consequence. Because Iran cannot rely on economic power alone to secure itself, it has built its national security on other pillars: a massive missile arsenal, a network of regional proxies, the threat of closing the Strait of Hormuz, and, most controversially, a nuclear program that provides what some analysts call strategic insurance for regime survival. Geography forced Iran to become a different kind of power. Not an economic giant like Saudi Arabia or the UAE, not a military superpower like the United States, but something harder to categorize. A country whose power comes not from what it can build, but from what it can threaten, disrupt, and endure. And this is the final piece of the puzzle. The thing geography gave Iran that matters more than oil, more than gas, more than mountains. Location. Iran sits at the intersection of the Middle East, Central Asia, South Asia, and the Caucasus. It borders 15 countries by land and sea. It connects the Persian Gulf to the Caspian Sea. It sits on the doorstep of the Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of global oil and a fifth of global LNG transit every day. And it straddles transit routes that major powers need. Russia needs Iran for the international North-South Transport Corridor, a trade route designed to connect Russia to the Indian Ocean, bypassing Western-controlled shipping lanes. China needs Iran for the Belt and Road Initiative, which envisions overland trade routes connecting Beijing to Europe through Central and Western Asia. India needs access through Iran to reach Afghanistan and Central Asia without going through Pakistan. Iran does not have to be wealthy to be powerful. It just has to be in the way. And that is exactly the position Tehran has leveraged for decades. When Iran threatens the Strait of Hormuz, it is not bluffing from strength. It is leveraging geography. When it builds proxy networks in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen, it is projecting power along geographic corridors that mountains prevent it from controlling directly. When it develops ballistic missiles capable of reaching Israel, Saudi Arabia, and US bases across the region, it is compensating for the fact that its geography makes offensive conventional warfare almost impossible. In 2026, all of this came to a head. The United States and Israel struck Iran with precision weapons that can bypass mountains. Stealth bombers dropped bunker busters on underground facilities that were supposed to be untouchable. The air campaign demonstrated that geography alone no longer guarantees protection the way it did for 2,500 years. But Iran's response also demonstrated the other side of geography. Even after losing its supreme leader, even after absorbing thousands of bombs, Iran kept firing missiles from dispersed launchers hidden across its vast territory. It shut down the Strait of Hormuz. It triggered a global energy crisis. And as of right now, it has not collapsed, has not surrendered, and has not stopped fighting. The fortress is battered, but the fortress is holding. Iran's geography problem is not one problem. It is a set of interlocking contradictions that have shaped the country for millennia. The mountains protect, but they also isolate. The deserts defend, but they also divide. The resources are vast, but they are hard to extract and harder to export. The location is powerful, but it makes Iran a target as much as a player. The terrain makes invasion nearly impossible, but it also makes unity a constant struggle. And that is why Iran behaves the way it does. The missile program, the proxy network, the nuclear ambiguity, the willingness to shut down the world's most important shipping lane, none of it is random. All of it is a country working with and against the geography it was dealt. The question nobody can answer yet is whether the events of 2026 have changed the equation. Precision weapons can now reach places that mountains used to protect. Air campaigns can degrade what geography used to guarantee. The old assumption that Iran cannot be conquered may still be true. But the newer reality, that Iran can be systematically degraded from the air without anyone setting foot on its soil, is something the fortress was not built to withstand. Iran is 3 times the size of France, ringed by mountains, divided by deserts, sitting on a plateau above the rest of the Middle East, with one hand on the world's most important energy choke point. And right now, every government, every military planner, and every energy company on Earth is trying to answer the same question. Is the fortress strong enough to survive what is coming next? Next video, we break down how Iran built and lost an entire empire of proxy forces across the Middle East, and what the collapse of that network means for the region. Subscribe now so you do not miss it.